spending money used to feel different. Not necessarily smarter or even more responsible, but just more real. Think about it. We actually used to physically watch our money leave our hands. You'd open a physical wallet, count out the bills, and physically hand something over. And for just a brief moment there, your brain registered a real sense of loss. But modern spending, it barely feels like losing anything at all, right? Nowadays, we just tap our phones against a glowing screen for, less than a second? There's absolutely no pause, no friction, and honestly, no emotional weight. And here's the thing. The less real spending feels, the easier we are to monetize continuously. That's the part most of us just never notice. Because modern payment systems, they were never just designed to make spending faster. They were quite literally designed to make spending feel psychologically invisible. And once our purchases stop feeling emotionally significant, we just stop resisting them the same way. So let's look at why tapping a card doesn't actually feel like spending. First, the loss of physical money, back when spending involved a tangible sacrifice. For most of human history, spending meant giving something physical up. You exchanged something tangible, whether it was coins, cash, objects, or resources. The transaction felt concrete. If you spent $50, you physically watched $50 disappear right in front of you. And that mattered a lot psychologically. Humans just naturally pay way more attention to visible loss. Cash created that visibility. You saw your money shrinking in real time, which meant spending naturally came with hesitation. Just these tiny little pauses. Do I really need this? Should I buy this right now? Is this actually worth it? Those pauses were incredibly important because that hesitation acts like a behavioral brake. It literally slows down our impulses. But modern payment systems gradually started chipping away at those pauses. And once they disappeared, our spending behavior totally changed along with them. Now, credit cards were one of the first major shifts here, not just because they gave us access to credit, but because they emotionally separated spending from loss. Swiping a card just doesn't feel the same as handing someone physical cash. Your brain processes that transaction completely differently. The money suddenly feels distant, kind of abstract, and detached. Then, digital payments pushed that separation even further. Now, we spend through phone taps, saved payment methods, completely invisible subscriptions, one-click purchases, auto-renewals, and delayed payment systems. Most transactions happen so blazingly fast that the emotional experience barely even registers anymore. And that changes our behavior in ways we rarely notice. Because when spending stops feeling emotionally real, we naturally become way less cautious with it. Now, let's talk about systems that remove hesitation. The hidden behavioral breakthrough. Most people assume payment tech evolved purely for our convenience. And sure, partially it did, but convenience was never the whole story. The real breakthrough here was behavioral. Modern systems discovered something incredibly profitable. The easier spending feels, the less resistance people experience before hitting buy. And resistance, that is dangerous for sales. Every single moment of hesitation creates risk. Risk that someone changes their mind. Risk that the impulse fades away. Risk that awareness interrupts the emotion of the moment. So modern financial systems basically evolved toward one massive goal: removing friction. That's exactly why companies so aggressively push one-click checkout, automatic renewals, saving your cards, instant financing, tap to pay, and those invisible subscriptions. Every single one of those features removes yet another moment where you might stop and reconsider. Think about how many apps bug you to permanently save your payment info. Why do they care so much? Because typing out those card numbers creates awareness. Awareness creates hesitation, and hesitation kills conversions. So systems now increasingly compete to just eliminate that awareness entirely. The ideal transaction today is one you barely even emotionally notice. That's why modern spending often feels so strangely weightless. Tap, swipe, done. Absolutely no emotional interruption. And when transactions stop interrupting our behavior, that behavior becomes incredibly easy to automate. Let's dive into the benefit of this emotional numbness, conditioning spending to feel invisible. Imagine spending $100 in cold hard cash. Now, imagine spending that exact same $100 by just tapping your phone. Same amount, right? But a completely different emotional experience. Physical money activates our sensory awareness. You literally see it leave. You touch it. You count it out. Cash forces the brain to experience reduction. Digital spending rips those sensory signals away entirely. And the thing is, human beings rely so heavily on sensory feedback to regulate our behavior. That's exactly why a lot of people spend way more freely with cards than with cash. It's not necessarily because they're being irresponsible. It's because digital transactions just feel psychologically softer. The loss feels totally abstract. The numbers just silently disappear from our accounts. Nothing physical ever leaves your hands. There's no visible reduction happening right in front of your eyes, which means the emotional impact severely weakens. And this becomes even stronger when we're online. Now purchases happen through glowing buttons, floating numbers, invisible transfers, and automatic approvals. Sometimes we buy things while barely even paying attention. And because that emotional signal is so weak, our brains stop treating spending with the same level of seriousness. That's a huge reason digital commerce exploded so aggressively. Not simply because it became easier, but because it became emotionally easier. And emotional ease changes human behavior way more than we realize. Modern spending systems actually work best when transactions stop feeling emotionally important. And that's kind of the uncomfortable truth underneath our entire convenience culture. Because emotional numbness increases behavioral repetition. Basically, the less painful spending feels, the easier it becomes to just repeat it automatically. That's why modern systems increasingly fragment our spending into smaller, recurring amounts. $10 here, $15 there, $9.99, $4.99, monthly, automatically. Individually, each payment feels emotionally tiny, but over time, those tiny invisible payments accumulate into massive financial extraction. This is a big reason why subscription systems have become so absolutely dominant. They normalize this permanent, low-resistance spending, and eventually, those payments stop feeling like active decisions at all. They just become background conditions. It's like paying digital rent, always running silently underneath our modern lives. Streaming services, cloud storage, software memberships, food delivery, premium upgrades, convenience fees. Most of us no longer experience these as individual spending decisions. Why? Because the emotional awareness surrounding them faded away years ago. And once awareness weakens, behavior becomes so easy to automate. That's the real system at work here. It's not about forcing people to spend. It's about conditioning spending to feel emotionally invisible. And the really strange thing is, most of us don't even remember when spending stopped feeling real. It happens so gradually. First, cards replaced cash. Then apps replaced stores, then subscriptions replaced ownership. After that, automatic renewals replaced conscious decisions. And finally, one-click systems completely removed any remaining hesitation. Now, millions of purchases happen every single day through systems we barely emotionally register. And that shift quietly but completely changed the psychology of consumption itself. Next up is buy now, pay later, separating pleasure from consequence. This is honestly one of the clearest examples of this whole phenomenon. Because with these systems, you receive the reward immediately, but the financial discomfort arrives later. And human beings, we are notoriously terrible at regulating delayed consequences compared to immediate ones. That's why installment systems feel so much psychologically lighter than a direct payment. The pain becomes fragmented. It's pushed into the distance. Future versions of yourself get to absorb the discomfort instead, which makes spending so much easier in the present moment. And again, none of this is accidental. Modern financial systems are in a constant competition to reduce emotional friction, because friction slows behavior down, and slower behavior means reduced consumption. That's why modern commerce increasingly feels completely instantaneous. See it, tap it, own it. The emotional pause that used to exist between desire and purchase just keeps shrinking. And once those pauses completely disappear, our impulses become incredibly hard to regulate. Which brings us to the death of financial pauses and why waiting was purposely eliminated. See, older systems naturally forced us to reflect. You had to drive to the store, you waited in line, you counted your cash, you physically carried your purchases home. Modern systems just deleted those pauses entirely. Now, the desire for something and the acquisition of it often happen within literally seconds. And that changes us psychologically. Because pauses used to give our emotions time to settle, time to reconsider, time to think clearly, and time to resist an impulse. But today's systems increasingly compete to eliminate waiting itself. And it's not because waiting is inefficient. It's because waiting creates opportunities for restraint. And restraint, that is terrible for conversion rates. That's exactly why convenience feels so incredibly powerful to us. Not just because it saves us time, but because it totally removes behavioral resistance. The easier these systems get, the harder it becomes for us to emotionally tolerate any friction at all. Slowly but surely, we become conditioned to expect it all. Instant access, instant gratification, instant convenience, and instant emotional rewards. And over time, hesitation itself just starts completely disappearing from our behavior. That's why modern spending can feel so strangely automatic, because increasingly, it is. Moving on to our next section,
The real product is behavior, when consumption scales continuously. At some point, these companies just stopped optimizing around transactions. They started optimizing around behavior itself. The goal became, how do we make spending feel natural, automatic, completely emotionally invisible? Because once spending becomes a habit, revenue becomes predictable. That's why ecosystems became the holy grail. Platforms no longer want your isolated one-off purchases.
They want embedded routines, stored cards, auto-renewals, integrated wallets, one-click systems, entire subscription ecosystems. The deeper your spending integrates into your daily routine, the less emotionally visible it becomes. And let me tell you, invisible behavior is extremely profitable because people will naturally defend the systems they've emotionally normalized. That's what makes modern spending architecture so incredibly powerful. It's not simply that we spend more, it's that our spending increasingly stops feeling like a conscious decision at all.
There's a great quote here. The real transformation wasn't digital money, it was emotional distance. Modern systems completely removed the feeling of spending itself. And once spending became psychologically softer, consumption became so much easier to scale continuously. That's exactly why invisible transactions dominate modern life today. Because the systems that extract our money most effectively are often the systems we just stop emotionally noticing entirely. Silent renewals, invisible tops, background subscriptions, fragmented payments, automatic charges. They're always running, always extracting, and always totally normalized. So money didn't disappear. The emotional signals surrounding it did. And that change quietly, completely reshaped modern behavior. Because when transactions stop feeling emotionally real, we just stop resisting them the same way. Convenience was never the entire story here. Reduced hesitation was. And the easier our spending becomes to ignore, the harder it becomes to recognize just how much these modern systems are quietly shaping our human behavior underneath the surface. So have you stopped recognizing how invisible systems shape your behavior? Think about it. If this explainer changed the way you see modern spending, make sure to subscribe to The Unseen Cost for more explainers exposing the invisible systems shaping money, behavior, and modern life.